Today, I'm joined by Sian Winfield, author, motivational speaker, and growth expert, with more than 25 years of experience helping people unlock their potential and perform at the highest level. From coaching CEOs and traders in London Square Mile to working with founders, entrepreneurs, and global brands, Sian has built her career around mindset, growth, and human performance. Straight talking, energetic, and passionate about helping people level up, she challenges people to step out, stand out, and do something extraordinary. She's the author of Take Your Shit to the Next Level. Her book, action-packed. This conversation is full of insight, challenge, and inspiration. A big, warm, no straight lines welcome to the truly inspirational Sian Winfield. Sian Winfield, good afternoon. Welcome to No Straight Lines.
Hello. Great to be here, Laurence.
Lovely to see you. Author, motivational speaker, and the bit I like, growth expert. And I read this, Sian, I thought, my God, there's lots going on here. But the one thing that just completely knocked me over is your book. The book has got the best title in the world. What's it called?
Well, it might be called Take Your Shit to the Next Level, which the idea being that it sums up what the reason the book was written for. But yeah, it's amalgamation of all the sort of best bits that I've learned along the way between fitness, mindset coaching, and growing businesses, and all mushed into this one book with sort of tried and tested methods of leveling up.
I love it. The inspirational title is that out to the Sian Winfield handbook, or did somebody inspire you to sort of come up with that title?
Oh.
Where's it come from?
Well, I think it's the sort of thing that I would naturally say, sort of let's level up, let's take your shit to the next level. And I think it just came out of the blue. Well, in fact, actually, initially I had the title in my head, get your shit together, for some reason. And then I think it was when I was traveling through Heathrow Airport, and I noticed a book on the shelf with a very similar title. So I was like, well, actually, also getting your shit together is completely different than taking it to the next level, substantially, if we're going to play with that medium, since we seem to be doing that.
Well, I guess 25 years ago, maybe a little longer, before you came up with this wonderful title for this wonderful book, which we'll talk about later. Where did it all begin? Because I think fitness is your background, isn't it, Sian? And I know you talk about the Square Mile. Tell us how it all sort of kicked off for you in terms of the Square Mile and fitness training and working with CEOs.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey, because actually all the things that I've done have been essentially growth-focused people, whether it's fitness or mindset or whatever that may be. And I kicked off in the fitness industry. And was a personal trainer and a teacher in the Square Mile back in the day when it had, it was actually in Broadgate Circle was the main one, where you had Lehman Brothers and UBS, and Lehman Brothers when they were still standing. I had nothing to do with that, obviously. But there was a lot of high caliber people that in that area, traders, CEOs, and people who really needed that fitness and that maintaining that level of the right mindset in an era where technology and perhaps systems weren't as much as they are lent on as much as they are now. Whereas back then it was, if I'm going to go and trade and I need to be on the trading floor and on point, then it's all about physical fitness and mindset and how they performed day to day. So it was a great space to be involved with sort of people who were aiming high and aiming to function in a really great space. So kicked off in the fitness industry there, and I had a number of clients and personal training clients and classes in that area, and it was brilliant, really great. I think I did that for about 5 years, and I personally took away a fair bit about it in terms of my own performance and my own mindset and the ability to be able to function much better when you're physically fit. Obviously, if the machine is working properly, then you're on point, right?
So true, in as much, and I can relate to that. There's the old sort of saying, isn't it? Mentally fit, physically fit, mentally fit. And we gotta look after our body, haven't we? And if either one of those functions ain't working to as it should do, then the body doesn't perform. So, I know that from my own experiences. Sometimes I just feel very sluggish, and I need to relook at what I'm doing, what I'm eating, my diet, and everything else. And then all of a sudden, if I get it right, that my brain is sharp, and my brain is sharp, then physically I'm in tune as well. Tell me though, in terms of interest and observation, you were working with CEOs, you're working with people working in fast-paced environments under a lot of pressure. I noticed from the research that you picked up on something which stuck in my mind, that you found out that you were fascinated that some people consistently thrived whilst others didn't.
Yeah.
And did that sort of prompt you to possibly ask the question, well, they look physically fit, but why aren't they functioning? Was there something else going on?
Yeah, great point. It was an interesting one because you can making a sweeping assumption that everyone in that space is going to be driven to achieve excellent results all the time and do what they need to get there. But what was happening was not everyone was consistent with the showing up with their training or doing it when they needed, or the effort, or just there was something a little bit off, or wasn't quite connecting with the motivation to be better at that, and therefore better at what they do. And so, I was thinking, well, what is it about that? And I'd heard at the time actually about Neuro-Linguistic Programming, NLP, before it's sort of cool, where it's sort of almost a given that it's an extra tool we utilize to perform better nowadays, right? Whereas back then it was sort of a few things, a bit more salesy, perhaps, some tools there, but not mainstream known. And so I decided to look more into that and study NLP in terms of really being able to better understand people's performance, barriers, individual barriers, maps of the world, views of the world, language models, how we interact with our own performance and expectations upon ourselves, and how to enable others to remove those barriers and become better at what they do and better at who they are, and therefore better version of themselves. So studied that. It was great, really interesting, and started to bring that into some of the training when I was training some of the traders, just verbally, in talking and motivating, managed to get more into why are they actually doing this? What are they telling me with the way they're speaking, what they really want to take away from this? And it was fascinating.
Fascinating, to say the least. And for you, obviously, you're entrenched in personal fitness and literally having access to these people to then talk, and obviously driven individuals, I assume, particularly in that part of the world, to talk to them then about psychologically what is going on in their brains that is driving their performance. Wow, you're almost like a sort of an executive coach then, aren't you? That's what you were doing.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we often see those spaces as very separate things, but sometimes if you mix some of these up, it can create quite an interesting impact. And I suppose actually it's nice to think about that. I haven't thought about that before. You're right, it's a little bit of a mix, right? So I started to straddle in terms of performance with them as well, and therefore actually from that point, it was interesting because I'd met someone or a few people locally who had trading companies there, and actually at that time I was having a beer in the square mile, which is what you did quite a lot then, right? Quite a few beers with the traders, and or the traders having quite a few beers, should I say? And one of the conversations that came up with a chap that was there was about how he had used NLP using the lessons and learnings from a book called NLP for Investors and Traders by Terry Carroll, very recommended book actually. And he said, look, I've used this and these tools, and he was saying how his performance was substantially higher, and he was really able to maintain the focus required throughout the day, and very much be like water through any of the things that came his way. You know, if you lost a number of million 1 minute at that point, and still today, but with different pressures, you're expected to get back on the horse and go, right, I'm in the room and I'm going to perform because I'm working with other people's money and expectations of me. So he was saying how the utilization of the right tools for you, and in this instance we're talking NLP, enabled him to really level up and raise his game substantially. And therefore then was said with a wry smile at the time, wouldn't it be great if my guys could do this? To which I nodded and said, well, I'll do it. I'll give it a go. I'll I'll, as you know, I've implemented it a bit. You've experienced that yourself. I'll write that into a program and roll it out on the trading floor. I think this, by this stage in my life, I'd put my hand up several times to things I hadn't necessarily prepared for, but knew I had the drive and ambition to achieve and the skills. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do that.
So in terms of sort of segueing the opportunity or seizing the opportunity, there you are sort of practicing your trade as a fitness coach. You suddenly take an interest in NLP. You're having these deep-rooted conversations with these high-flying execs, traders, etc., who are losing millions one minute and making it the next.
Yeah.
How did you then how did you move into that sort of space? How did you start to put together these programs, and in what format were they delivered?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time I wasn't new to necessarily business. I was a background in business studies, etc. And so it was very interesting. So I found myself having bitten off something that I then had to deliver, right? So it was all about reading the book, obviously understanding the methodologies there, which was some I'd come across, some new ways of doing it. Brilliant book, actually. And it was more about enabling the use of these tools through the book rather than jumping in at that space myself. But yeah, I read that. I then had to learn to trade. I had to go into their offices and spend a bit of time there, which was a bit of a jolly. When there was at the time no women's toilet or just the one, and it was just I hadn't anticipated what a hugely male environment it would be, but what a silly lass to think that anything other than that at the time. But it wasn't something. I'm not necessarily one who thinks of the perhaps potential pitfalls, rather future focused, let's do this. So there's a few things that appeared that I hadn't anticipated or properly thought about in that respect, but never the one to back out of the challenge. So there were a few things in terms of engaging with the space, understanding the culture, learning to trade, and which was a nice nod to my father, who was when he was around, he was a stockbroker, so it was nice to play for a moment in his shoes reflectively. I think he was substantially better than me. So learning that and then pulling it out and putting it into the book into something that was just easy to teach a room and engage a room with, which I think really is whether you've got that ability. And I think actually from doing that, engaging a room sort of 40, 50 people in a class, the ability to read where everyone was with everything, that sort of thing was definitely helpful. The ability to see many layers within something and understand the methodology. It was great. And it was a nice experience to personally challenge myself in terms of, wait a minute, I've done quite a few things by this point, and each time I step up, I trust myself now to deliver that. And so it was a great space to find myself in, and the others, and immensely interesting in terms of personal development and, with the fitness and then the mindset, what one can start to do with yourself in terms of your ability to achieve more.
I think it's remarkable what you've done to date. And, we talk about author, we talk about motivational speaker, I mentioned the phrase, I think, executive coach. But the growth expert side of it, I really like that in terms of understanding how you sort of move into businesses, advise businesses, and give advice in terms of how they can accelerate that growth. So the book that you keep talking about, you say the book.
Yeah.
When that conversation with the traders was taking place, was that the inspiration for you to go away and create a book that you were going to, obviously at a later date, assign this wonderful title to? Is it all in there? Is all these methodologies and these theories in that book that you've written?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I suppose there's a few layers above that. In terms of, at this stage, I was discovering who I was in terms of stacked value. And if everything I was focusing on was enabling and helping others to grow alongside myself, then I still had a fair few layers to stack onto that before I was in the position, or before a book came to mind in terms of the learning. And, if I was to, it inspired me in terms of my ability to do stuff I hadn't done before, putting it in a very technical way there. So when I got to the stage where I wrote the book, which is a couple of years ago, so it's been a nice journey in my career since then, I had the focus, the drive and ambition and grit just to get my head down and write a book. So I think moments like that, rather than it being at that moment, it's moments like that drove me to understand performance better that would later, at a later date, go into the book, and my own ability to deliver things that I hadn't done before.
Again, something I read about you is that, this whole podcast, we talk about business entrepreneurs' success. We talk about some of the highs, and we've had some brilliant stories here, and your story is equally as good as as those that have gone before you. But one of the questions I always ask people is, what were the defining moments? What were the learnings? What were the setbacks? In your instance, Sian, what were those defining moments, and what were the setbacks and challenges that you've encountered through your journey?
I'm very much a believer in the fact that we grow and develop into who we end up becoming, and we're always continuously doing that. So I would go back to source for myself and say that the first moment when, or period of my life where I started to develop tools that would enable me to achieve as much as I have, would be having left home at an earlier age. So, leaving home earlier than, I think it was earlier teens, and leaving at that point, and then making my own way from that point, was probably, I see things as everything has two ends of the polarity of what that piece means to you. Yes, not ideal, right? But wow, what a way to learn. So you go, well, putting that together, and then you're on your way. So I'd say my first point was developing, being brave, developing bravery at a young age. The ability to step into a space and hold it, even though inside you're absolutely pooping yourself, but you're stepping in there, you're holding your head up. You know what I mean? And developing from that point, you then develop the resilience and the anti-fragility to continue in that space. So I'd say those are the pieces that I took very early doors, and at those points, you very much establish what the tools are that are going to make you continue in this world. That was definitely a defining period for me.
Well, let's take you back to those early years. You left home at an early age. I'm assuming without any plan, but where was home, and what was the plan, or how did you manage to sort of survive in those early years?
I don't know how often young'uns have a plan. I'm going that way, which I think was where I was heading. I'll do that. I'm going to leave. I think that I felt as if that's what I wanted to do. What I do know, Laurence, is that at that time I had a deep motivation to just be looking after myself and be independent. So I suppose that's something, when I reflect on that as I talk to you, is something that's continued for substantially since then. But my driver was to create something of my own. So it was to have a space, and I was looking after myself and be independent. So that was an initial driver for me. And I think that, I think it was a different back then. You'd have to run around into different places to find things that you needed to do to make money. I was still studying at the time, and then also I had to make money. So I remember I just got a coffee job in Beak Street, making coffee. I was doing anything, making coffees. But then you could go into a place, do that, and then you could go down the road, go to another place, and go, have you got any work? Yeah. Do you want to do something here? So I think at one point I had 3 little bits and pieces going on in different places just to get a bit of money going at a young age. And I had a bed sit. I think it was £50 a week. Couldn't get anything like that now, could you? Can you imagine? Literally, that's not even anything. So £50 a week, and I remember at that time, another thing that this podcast is nicely allowing me to reflect on is the sense of accomplishment when I did have that room, little box room with the bed and the things, and I was like, well, I'm proud. I feel good. This is good. I created this from nothing. This exists now because I chose to do something. So, again, as we go back to your point on, what is the foundation and some of the things that help you build who you become, these things that then started to exist. I'm like, okay, well, this is doable. This is completely doable. So yeah, it was a bit tricky at the start. And then that's when I went on to further study. I think I did all sorts of different things. And then I further study anatomy and physiology, and then through into the fitness space. And, I developed the ability to constantly step forward into the next bit of learning and always asking myself, what am I seeing? What am I not seeing? When I fell on my face, what did I learn? And that I would be, I suppose, consistently moving forwards, whatever moving forward was, and whether I wanted to or not was another one. Because it's tricky, doing everything in an environment where you might be struggling at times. But I started to understand that you just have to keep taking the daily actions that are in front of you, whether or not you feel like that at all. And that was another piece out of I'm struggling maybe to pay the bills. I'm struggling to understand what is in front of me in the world at a young age. What I did develop was the ability to just get up and do the things that needed to be done, and that actually you keep going that way.
Well, it's a great story, and it's an excellent example for any young people listening to this in terms of, life's not easy, is it? For a young person leaving home, getting a bed sit, making good use of it and seeing the positives. I've created this. This is mine. This is my independence.
Yeah.
I love your reflection as well in terms of go get a job. Easier said than done. But 1 minute you're a barista, the next minute you're doing something else. But you do whatever you got to do to survive, and you're finding your way. And I think in your story, and it's loud and clear, in anybody looking at your website or anybody doing any research on you will see that you're clearly driven. You're clearly focus, anything is possible sort of mentality.
Definitely.
I certainly haven't read the book today, but in terms of what you speak about, you're a motivational speaker. You've stood on various platforms and panels, and you've addressed audiences. I can see how people could be inspired, and I'm sure that those early years' experience has sort of prepared you for what obviously lay ahead. Tell us what you talk about. So the motivational speaking, how does it work? Who do you speak to? What are your messages?
It's interesting how I actually got into the motivational speaking, because it was through the book. It was through the book tour that I did. And I was doing lots of take your shit to the next level talks around the book and discussing what that was all about, and, the resilience and the focus required to actually write that. And then what is it that I was sharing, and it was very much talking about things like, the structure that I talk about within it is having the machine functioning in the right way, the physical part of you, which you learned from the fitness industry, the mindset and the type of thinking required to be successful, and the focus there. And then I was also talking about things like a nice mix, actually, things like showing up in a room with the right energy. Right? There's no point being great at what you do, but if you don't engage your room with the right energy or know how to use your energy, sustained periods, working at a really high level, or the times when you need to slow that down to maintain sustained periods of work. So I was talking about all these things that I do in the book. And then I think by the time I'd done this about 20 times in the book tour, it was sort of like, well, I think I have something that I can just talk to without the book, right? This is the book, these are the theories, the book to the side. Actually, this is still, and in of itself, something that's shareable. So that's where the motivational speaking came from. And I think I got spotted by an agency, and then there's various different things, speaking gigs that appeared. But really what I like to do with the motivational speaking is, I think it's about engaging the room with an energy. People are there to learn. They want to be motivated. So it's getting on the stage and it's going, right, where are we at in this room? Who's here? How are you doing? How can we make this great? And sharing, some of the tools and techniques in the best way to be able to level up. And as I said, that can be, tried and tested methods that I use with some of my coaching clients, for example, and things like 10% performing at 10% better at any given moment, or pick 5 things that you need to do that day and actually making sure that you achieve them rather than 20 and not getting any done. And some of the more simplistic theories like that, actually, we hear a lot, but does anyone actually do them? So it's more along the lines of, okay, so what, how can I share some learning with an audience of people who've actually achieved it and use these methods, and what do they want to take away? And it's good fun. So I've mixed doing the motivational speaking now with, the coaching and other stuff that I do.
And the energy comes through, Sian. It does. It really does. You got tons of it. I think if you could can that and market it, you could make a lot of money out of those energy cans.
I've tried. Thank you very much for that compliment. I've tried.
Let's talk about sort of inspiring the next generation. Let's
Yeah.
talk about sort of founders, entrepreneurs, people who've got these wonderful ideas, not quite sure how to take them forward. Accelerator programs. You've been involved in some of those accelerator programs, haven't you? Tell us about them.
Yeah. So, interesting. Few of them I've been involved with, and there's a number of them out there, and they're great spaces to create for founders and brands or companies that really need that direction. It's very easy to get lost when you're building out something. If I'm going to blanket statement it, and these spaces create a space where you get the right people, the right experts in the room, and we can fast track people to where they want to go, and also help them secure something at the end. Like, they've got a great product, but who might be interested in this, and how can they tailor it into something that people would either invest in or buy, or with a solid go-to-market strategy. And so these accelerator spaces that are created around the ones that I've worked with in the UK, but globally, are fantastic for elevating and lifting up some great ideas into the world. And so myself, I've been involved with a number of different sort of accelerator programs. I mean, I think the biggest one, I suppose, is the LMARCS program that I've been involved with, and but Peter Jones Foundation, and some of the Founder Vine and Barclays Black Founder accelerator programs, and each of them have their own space that they create. But ultimately, the way I got engaged with them by mentoring, ultimately going in and mentoring and giving the guidance that they needed to continue through that program successfully. So they may have all of the right experts, individual marketing, individual finances, or different things like that. My experience comes from being able to read the room in terms of how the team, the culture, the dynamics, the strategy is, but also, are they going to actually be able to deliver this practically over the period of the program to be able to end up delivering what they're set out to do. For example, one of them, I worked with a number of robotics companies that were going to present to DPD in order to help them meet their sustainability targets. As we all know, like a statement, as some of us may know, it's actually easier to bring in a new idea from an individual startup than it is starting something within a larger organization. So these spaces create a great way for bigger brands and companies to create new ideas and then plug them into what is already quite an old hat system, but enables them to elevate that. And in this regard, it was sustainability. And so my role in that example was to make sure that the guys there were making the most of that opportunity, thinking about how they plug into the larger company, and then also future focused. How is this brand or how is this business going to continue to work in the future? And do they have the right structures and bits and pieces in place? And as you've already said, it was the energy and the motivation that I bring to enable them to keep going through a program that can be quite taxing. So I think a mixture of different things. I've thoroughly enjoyed doing all of them. I think it's a great idea to have a space that is created specifically for that. And definitely programs like brands like Founder Vine, who do a lot of the Barclays like Black Founder accelerator programs and pieces like that, because I think it then evens what is an uneven playing field, in my opinion, and space that I really like to get involved with.
Great advice for anybody out there who's sort of looking to sort of start or in the process of running a business and need that acceleration. And I'm sure they'd learn a hell of a lot from what you say, Sian, and the energy, I think, is so important. It is important, isn't it? You want to be in a room where somebody can inspire you. So with that energy attached to some bloody real good advice and good content, could make a big difference. I'm sure you made a huge difference, and well done on doing that. Okay, let's have a little sort of play around with this book then. So when was the book launched?
Yes, a couple of years ago.
Where was it published?
Have a look. Oh, 2 years ago. May 2 years ago.
What have you been doing with it over the last couple of years? Give us some nuggets. You've already given us a few, but give us some more nuggets from that book. Pick out 1 or 2 chapters and tell us about the content.
I'm looking down because I've got a copy of it in front of me. I suppose the main nugget. There's a couple of nuggets. One would be, I suppose, that I think is so often missing with anything that anyone gives you guidance on in a book or anything else, is developing consistency around the routines that you're looking to apply. because we might do akin to accelerator program, or going into work and doing your job, or getting up and going to the gym, or being in the right mindset. One of the pieces I talk about a lot that pulls together what I share in the book is to do with consistency and the ongoing ability to deliver everything you need to do day to day, to give you that accelerated exponential growth over time, that compound growth, I think is actually very, very powerful. So many people look to bite off more than they can chew, and in a inconsistent way. Whereas actually, if we do a little bit less of just the right things and maintain that consistency, it enables us to actually elevate our performance and take our shit to the next level just by maintaining those things. I mean, we see that with saving, for example, or we see that perhaps with that extra bar of chocolate you eat every day until you realize that your jeans aren't fitting anymore. And you're like, wait a minute, well, there's the good old compound. So what if we actually did that with some of the things that serve us, right? Just day to day, being better at the right habits, which I mentioned in the book a lot. What are the habits for success that will enable you to become who you want to become? Your habits that served you 6 months ago, they probably need to shift. If you want to be moving forward, if you're doing the same things you were 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, how is that going to move you forward? So it's about developing great habits that help propel you forwards to who you want to become, not just who you are now. The consistency around delivering those, because there's not a great deal of value if there isn't that. Another nugget from the book, which I think is absolutely fundamental to any type of success, is actually taking action. It's so many things. We talk a good game, we talk a great game, and we do a lot of thinking around things. But how much of your time, your quality time, is actually spent on actions? And one of the key principles I like to share is as I do this sort of this theory within my book, which is about assessing your actions. Which end of the scale do they land on? Are they taking you backwards? Progressing actions, which we all have done, or maybe we don't, but ultimately they're actions we can take that drive us backwards. And that can be procrastinating, even, because it's wasting our time and moving us backwards, right?
I was gonna make a suggestion, and it's quite a facetious suggestion. But have you thought about sending some complimentary copies of this books to wonderful politicians scattered across the country? I'm sure they'd find it useful in terms of taking action.
I love that. In fact, you've just said that to the right sort of woman, actually, there, because I'm thinking that's actually quite brilliant. And we've made jest there, Laurence, but actually, you never know. I may have just written it on a post-it and be sending out books as after this podcast. I think that's absolutely brilliant, right? But what a great example of how actually inbuilt it is to do a lot of nothing, a lot of things that just keep us on the spotlight, culturally even, and that it's accepted. So yeah, great spot. I love that. So yeah, and then the pieces where we do the things that maintain. So a lot of the actions that we're taking are maintaining. So great, sort of, we need to do them, but let's make sure we're not spending all our time in that space. And then we've got the power piece, which is the actions that drive us forward. So what I ask and I challenge in the book and now is to think about how many of the actions you've taken today, or one takes today, this week, have been the ones that actually move you forward, versus the ones that keep you on track or just static, versus the one that take you backwards. And actually, it's a powerful, powerful tool. If you spend time reflecting on each day, making sure that at least 75%, or there's a lot of actions that are driving you forward, and that you're minimizing the time spent on the ones that definitely the ones that take you back, but the ones that maintain, you drive growth in a really fantastic way. And that's something that I've naturally done, but I've seen others and implemented with others. And so, yeah, that's probably one of the most powerful strategies from the book, because you can implement it today, and it works. It really works. And again, there's that consistency needed to keep that going, and then you're away.
Fascinating. Staying with the book, I've been sort of looking around your website as well, and I know you do these online masterclasses. And I think a lot of the subject matter from the book is in these masterclasses. Just expand on that upon us, Sian. What anybody sort of going online and wanted to jump onto one of these courses that you offer, what would they be getting?
Yeah, so I've done a few workshops in this. The one that's online is actually just a digital masterclass. So it's completely online self-learning, which is great. What it does is it elaborates on some of the theories in the book. So what they would take away from the digital masterclass, for example, is they would take away a firm path forward to becoming the best version of yourself, because that is the subtitle of the book, not as exciting as the main title. So, they would be developing the best version of themselves from understanding how to develop that physically, the right mindset, the right energy space. So those three, I have it in a sort of a diagram where they're the pillars of the infrastructure of being the center core of the best version of yourself. And then the foundations of those, which is actions, consistency, and habits that maintain you working and functioning in that best version of yourself. And then things like the other layer. So once you've got to that point, it's like, great, so I'm functioning in a really great way. I am the best version of myself. What do I do with that? There you go. That's very important. So we talk about things like knowing who you are and understanding how you function in the world. How do you interact with your time and your time management? It's one thing being and feeling great about yourself and having the right mindset, but actually it's all delivered through how we're using our time. If you're not using your time well, you're not getting anything done, and therefore doesn't mean how well you're feeling and how on point you are. So I go into the fundamentals of some of the better use of time management and how to navigate that space properly. And it's not just about tools that we use. We so often see, I'll bring in some brand names because you have, Trello, or I've got this, or I use that. And it's like, great. But if you don't understand how you interact with your time, when you're most motivated, what you need to do when, and how it's going to take you to where you want to go, ultimately, professionally or personally, none of the rest matters. So the book takes them from the principles of becoming the best version of yourself to functioning as that. So time management through to knowing who you are. I talk about the magic of understanding who, we see things like DISC profile and Myers-Briggs and all these things, and they're often done as forced fun in workplaces. But actually, how fantastic is it to know how you function and how you interact with information, or how you work with others, or how your team works. So again, being the best version of yourself, but how do you actually function forwards in that space? So
look, it sounds action-packed. Obviously, for anybody wishing to get a copy of this book, I'm assuming if I walk into Waterstones, I can place my order. I can probably order it online via Amazon and all sort of normal, highly recommended outlets. It's out there and it's available and it's ready to buy. Full of great advice. Okay. Well, listen, you're a busy person. You've got lots going on. If you're not speaking to people, you're running masterclasses. If you're not running masterclasses, you might even be running around doing some personal training or whatever, or you're writing books. But what's next? What's coming up? What are the goals for this year and beyond, Sian? Where are you going?
Okay. Great question, and an opportunity for me to maybe have a think about that. But yeah, so I suppose at any given moment, I'm always looking to continue to impact as many people as possible. So I will continue to hold talks and share learning from the book and sharing that within wider communities. So that's always on the cards. I think, I also do mentoring for programs, so accelerator programs, and individually mentoring as well. So that's also available. Actually through my website for those who may want to tap into that as well. But I suppose I actually do have the thinking of a new book ticking away in there. But so that's definitely something that I'm playing with. It's going to be another level. So that's something that's on the cards there. And, just continuing to work with great people. I get the opportunity to work with some really amazing people, from critically acclaimed comedians to founders of multi-million-pound companies, right the way through to, young entrepreneurs, 19 to 25, in a room full of, say, 100 of them, and talking and motivating them. So all these pieces continue to be a part of what I do day to day, and moving forwards. And let's see.
Sian, I could talk to you all day long, honestly. This is high energy. It's certainly on message with a lot of the stuff that I think about and do. It's certainly online with this podcast in terms of no straight lines. Yours isn't straight line, and that's for sure. But some brilliant work in there. I can understand why you'd be motivating audiences. I'm definitely going to get a copy of the book. And I can see, again, any sort of budding entrepreneur out there on one of these accelerator programs, like, it's obvious from this that they're going to learn so much from somebody like yourself. Thank you for joining No Straight Lines. As I said, we could talk forever, but we can't because we've run out of time. But the biggest thank you from me is thank you for inspiring all of us and our listeners to try and take our shit to the next level. Sian Winfield, thank you so much.
Thank you.